Hi, I'm Austin, and along with Alex, we are doing The Death and Rise of Superman. Alright, so a little bit of background information before I start this. Basically, the first part of this presentation is, why is Superman so important in the comic book world? And the answer to that is, he is the first one. He was released back in I think it was the 20s or the 30s, and he was part of this thing called the Action Comics, and it's like the Twilight Zone where they have different stories all the time, but he was a pretty, he came in a lot of those stories. And, this is the first one, so when we look at Superman today, he's not that special. He can fly and he can do all this stuff, but, back in the 1920s when he was first introduced, everybody was like, oh, he can fly and stuff, and he can throw cars with his own fists and move planets and shoot laser beams out of his eyes. Wow, that's so cool. But, the problem is we look at Superman today and he's like, oh, really? He can fly? What a big deal, right? Like, they give this stuff out like candy. It's like every other person who's a comic book character, who's a superhero, can fly. Mr. Marvel can fly. Storm from X-Men can fly, and it's not just flying. It's the laser beam, super strength, being able to move really, really fast. It's all these things these generic powers that anybody can think of. And now we have characters that they're interesting, like the Punisher, of interesting backstories, and they don't really have a superpower, and their powers are very different, but. Basically Superman was this generic person, and in the 90s nobody really cared about Superman. He wasn't that big of a deal. It was Batman and all these other comics. It wasn't even DC anymore. It was more Marvel that had really taken the edge in the comic book industry. So DC had their Superman character, and they had to figure out a way. How do we make Superman relevant again? How do we get people to start caring about Superman again? And their answer to that was, let's kill him off. So anyway, it's kind of, when you think about it, it's like Superman is the most invincible character that you can think of, right? That's his whole thing. Aside from Kryptonite, this guy can pretty much kick anybody's butt and have a nice cup of tea, 5 minutes later. It's his whole thing. He can kill pretty much anything, anyone, anytime. So DC had to come up with someone who would take this guy down. And this is that story. So anyway, there's this alien planet off in the distant reaches of space with this mad scientist on it. And what this mad scientist is doing, he's got this baby, right? I don't know if it's alien or if it's human. It doesn't say. But he's got this baby, and he's killing it basically over and over and over by throwing it against mountains and cliffs and making it fight against these alien creatures, and it dies over and over and over. But when it dies, he clones it over again. So he's got this baby that has all these experiences of being thrown against the wall, thrown off a cliff, fighting with space creatures, and he's reliving that over and over and over and over again until he becomes this super mega giant beast called Doomsday, who's basically the green, the Hulk, but gray, and he's got this weird stone acne problem, and he's got a pretty bad temper. So anyway, Doomsday turns on his master, creator, evil doctor, whatever, and kills him. Surprise, surprise. And he blows up this entire planet that he's on, killing pretty much everybody on it, and gets into this space doohickey and flies off towards Earth. So anyway, back on Earth, the Justice League, they hear this report about an asteroid falling to Earth. So these goofballs are like, oh, let's go check this out. Oh, let's see what's up. And anyway, they get there, and Doomsday's there waiting for them, and he just starts whamming on everybody, just killing it, like beating them up, and everybody's like, oh my god, he's so strong! Ah! And Doomsday's like, punch, punch. And the hallmark this occasion, there's this guy named Booster Gold who's part of the Justice League, and he hallmarks this by getting punched into space by Doomsday. Like, literally punched into space. So anyway, he's up there. Superman's flying up in space for some reason, minding his own business. And all of a sudden he sees Booster Gold coming out. And he goes over to Booster Gold. He's catching up. He caught him. And Booster's like, oh man, I'm dying and stuff, dude. And then Superman's like, what's going on? And Booster's last words to Superman are, Doomsday. So, Superman's like, what? And he goes down to Earth to take care of Doomsday. And they have this huge fight. And, they're tearing crap up all over the place. And it ends with Superman throwing Doomsday into a lake. And Superman's like, derp, I guess that's good. And he flies off to Metropolis. Now, obviously, Doomsday is not dead. Doomsday gets out of the water, and I'm not making this up. He sees this TV somewhere, and it has the boxing championship from Metropolis. Doomsday looks at this TV, goes, I like fighting. There's fighting in Metropolis. I'm going to go to Metropolis. And that's it. Not much of a plot. Anyway, he leaves from Metropolis, goes there. Obviously, he finds Superman again. They fight, and it's like this is their last fight. So it's huge. They're just destroying everything. Doomsday has already killed like 4 other superheroes, and Superman's guy comes in, tries to stop him, and basically, the end of this fight, they got one final punch, their biggest punch ever. They throw it, and Superman goes, and Doomsday goes, and they both die. And that's the end of the fight. So, Superman's dead. Everybody's sad. Lois Lane is lost it. Everybody's just crying, and they're all very sad, lots of tears. And it's awful. This is big news. Like, not just in the comic book world, but I mean like world, like in the real world. Like this was on the news. Superman meant something to people. It's quite sad. So anyway, not one issue after Superman had died. Before we get to that, DC. They shipped out more than 3 million copies of Death of Superman. Almost every store sold out within the first day of release. So DC is having a ball. Like they're loving life. They don't care who knows it. They're fine and dandy as far as they're concerned. So now 1 issue after Superman had died, DC tries to insert 4 new characters to kind of take the place, I guess, of Superman. From left to right now. The first one is Steel. He was this black grandfather named Jeremy Irons. His last name is Irons. His superhero name is Steel. It's not really that witty. It's kind of dumb, but this is what they go for. And then in the middle, you have the Metropolis kid, who's basically like Superman if he was a go-go dancer. He's got really, really, really tight leather jacket with like these spandex red pants and these weird circular glasses that he thinks are cool. And he's basically like this dumbed-down version of Superboy. And he's actually not that strong at all. And then the third one is the Eradicator, who's this Kryptonian robot who, after Superman dies, Krypton automatically sends to wipe out Earth because Superman is now dead. And this is the guy who everybody thinks he's actually Superman. So they're all like, oh, Superman, we love you. Come be our friend and stuff. And he's like, eradicate. And he just kills tons of people. But the fourth one, the most important one, is Cyborg. And Cyborg he's kind of a complicated character. He's this guy named Hank Henshaw who can download his consciousness into the network, into the internet, into anything technologically based. And he can go from computer to computer and do whatever he wants, basically. Anyway, he finds this Superman's DNA somewhere, and he clones himself a new body, and he looks exactly like Superman, save for, the little rash on his face with all the metal and stuff. And he goes crazy. He's evil. He blames Superman for the death of his wife because, for no reason, basically. He just hates the guy. And he's really, really evil. He kills Steel, kills the Metropolis kid, and he also killed the Eradicator. And this is like the first 3 issues after Superman's death. And then to top that all off, he goes to Coast City, which is basically Green Lantern's hometown. It's Batman's Gotham. It's Superman's Metropolis, and he just wipes it off the map. And and Green Lantern for a little bit goes crazy until he's beaten by Cyborg. And he doesn't die. He actually, I don't know, he comes back later. Anyway, Superman, out of nowhere, returns and kicks the crap out of Cyborg. And everybody's like, wait, what? He's dead. This is... what? When Kryptonians die, their consciousness or whatever is transferred back to Krypton, where they stay in this birthing matrix. It's basically a really not very carefully drawn, last-minute plot device. And this is where he regenerates in this kind of a comatose state. Basically, he's sleeping this entire time that he died, and Cyborg's creating havoc on Earth. Anyway, he comes back. He's got this black leotard spacesuit and long hair now, and he thinks he's in a rock band or whatever. And he kicks the crap out of Cyborg, rips his head off, and throws him into space. Because of Superman coming back, the fans of the DC Comics felt very lied and very betrayed to, and their sales dropped for 2 years continuously, and have since never recovered because they brought Superman back in this really, really dumb decision. So, the end of the story is not that, the big part about the story is not that DC killed Superman, it's that DC killed death. They broke death in comics. Up until the return of Superman, nobody had really come back from death before. You die, you're pretty much done. They'd been pretty ginger with death thus far, but as soon as Superman dies, doors are wide open. Anybody and everybody can come back. These are just some of the people who have been returned from death. You got Batman, Superman, Green Lantern, Flash, Daredevil, Batwoman, The Thing, Booster Gold, the guy that got punched into space, Captain America, Elektra, the Punisher even, and just tons more. There wasn't a limit, basically, on who could come from death. And that's really why the death of Superman is so important. It was because it broke that barrier, and you could pretty much do anything you wanted anymore. So that's the death and return of Superman. Hope you liked it.